You got all that, right? Yeah. Nate and Amber Butler, thank you so much for making the time to stop by and talk. We've been having such a good conversation already.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. I've been listening to your songs. I mean, this is a small town. I think everybody by now, everybody has heard you, but we finally get the chance to just, I've seen you several times playing GB Call downtown, but cool. You're always busy.
Yeah.
You're always playing, and now we get the chance to sit down and talk about the wonderful music that you make, but the dynamic, because I saw you playing together. I didn't know that you were husband and wife. And I had immediate questions about that, how that worked, especially as musicians, males. I'm gonna just say that, we tend to be kind of just focused on the art, right? And kind of we forget about all these other things. In my own case, my wife kind of keeps me into the reality check most of the time, say, hey, we gotta stay down here. But you guys are so productive musically, and you do a lot of other things. You have your own business. You're having other projects for the community as well. So let's get started, but let's go back and recapture some of those conversations that we had previously.
Okay.
And tell us how you met.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
and this is the part where everybody looks at each other.
Yeah.
Like, you go first. You go
Right.
first.
Love, true love.
Well, we both grew up in this area and had mutual friends, but I was saying, Nate's a little bit older than me, so I was pretty young when we first met, and we were just friends. But we both were very into music and, hanging out and stuff. So we eventually started being a little more interested in each other as we got older. But yeah.
Let me ask you and put you on the spot, Nate.
Sure.
Was there a particular moment where you said, she's mine, I gotta be with her? Was that moment, or was this something that kind of grew into you? She's laughing.
Yeah.
Completely put you on the spot.
Well, I think probably one moment that sticks out to me was I used to play drums for all of these events in the area, and one night after an event, it was actually at the middle school. There was, several hundred people there, and I had played drums for the event. And as we were finishing, I was, like I did after every event, or every show, like packing all my drums, try to fit them in the trunk. And Amber came up and was like, hey, can I help you carry your bags to the car? And I was like, oh, help. Okay. Yeah. So that made an impression for sure.
Absolutely. And drummers always have it the worst, right? Because they have so many
So
pieces.
much stuff.
My hardware bag weighed more than she did. So
Wow, that's awesome. So let's talk about your individual musical careers. So Amber, how do you play the guitar extremely well? I mean, you're so tight when you play together. How do you start your musical career?
Well, I grew up singing, like in school and church. But guitar, I just started self-taught in like high school. But I did take a little bit of lessons like through college, and just kept up with it. But a lot of it has been just kind of working at it over time. And I took some time away from the guitar and then came back. And probably as far as tightness, that's definitely partly up to Nate, because he's been very encouraging in that area, just because, I think we both have an excellence bent, so we're just naturally sort of like, we want to get better, we want to keep working at things. But I would say a strong mixture of kind of self-study and, some key opportunities. Kept playing in churches and played in a couple different bands. I played bass for a while.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even with Shiny Shiny Black, it's only like, is it the last maybe 2 year and a half maybe that I like went back to acoustic primarily. So yeah, it's been kind of an evolution.
Very good.
Yeah.
How about you, Nate?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. How do you start your musical career?
It's hard to say when it started, but I will say that like by the time I was in my early teens, I started, I saw an opportunity to play drums in my church, and I was terrible. But
Yeah.
they were like, well, here. So back then there was like, it was a church that they didn't do like hymnals, right? They had lyrics up on a screen, and so they were like, okay, well, you're 13, you can sit here by the drummer and put the lyrics on the screen, and you'll learn, you know, how to like do this job well by watching this guy. Or it was several of them, and so I would do that, and then I didn't have a drum set, so I would go home and put books on my bed, and somebody gave me a pair of drumsticks, and so I would sit by the bed and you know, and that's how I taught myself how to play. And so I would say about 6 months of that, and like I got my first opportunity to play drums in church. I was so excited, and just kind of came up through that. So I think I was probably about 15. I started my first band. It was a heavy metal band. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, totally. So.
And the guitar? How did you learn guitar?
That came much later. So we had been married, and I had been playing drums professionally for a number of years, and I just got to a place where I had been working with a lot of singer-songwriters, and I wanted to be a little more in control of my own schedule, meaning that, like, you know, if the gig didn't pay that good, or it was going to be, you know, a smaller room or whatever, I was always the first person to get cut, you know.
Right.
And so it was like everybody else is playing, and I'm like sitting at home, like wishing, you know. And I got to a point where I just got really tired of being always the wagon hitched to somebody else's horse. And so I was like, I need to become a songwriter. And so I really made that decision in about 2007. So I was already 32 years old at that point.
Wow.
So
you founded your sound and company, right? It's a technology company.
Yeah,
You're
a recording
sound engineer
studio. Recording studio.
So you were doing that before then you learned guitar. Wow.
Even before guitar. Yeah. No, I was always the guy, like, on recording sessions, like, oh, you know, I would get the tone dialed in on the guitar amps, or, you know, when I was in bands, everybody was always
kind of a producer mindset, even just all the way along. But
right. So yeah. So I just, yeah, we had already been in business for like 4 years. Probably by the time I decided, you know, I'm going to become a songwriter and learn how to sing, because I had sang backup vocals to that point in a lot of bands, but I would not have thought of myself at all as a singer at that point.
Wow.
So
wonderful. We're going to go back to the musical part of it, but let's talk about the song "Stranger in a Little Town."
Oh yeah,
because, you know, I was telling you, I listened to that song, and there's this peak of that song to me where there's this sentence that says, "Do you feel alone? Do you feel alone? Do you feel alone?" And it has so much energy. Yeah. And you know, you hear that the very first time. I heard that the first time, and you know, it's part of the song. But then by the third time you say that really becomes a question. Yeah. And kind of had to stop it. I'm like, man, this is powerful.
Thank you.
And you know, you look at the lyrics. Yeah. And you're like, man, this is. There's so much to this song. Mm-hmm. You wrote that song, correct? Mm-hmm. Tell me what you were thinking. How that song came to be.
Yeah, I think I just really sensed kind of culturally that people were feeling very isolated from each other. And I kind of wanted to get into people's faces a little bit about it and say, like, hey, like, it's not just you, like, all of us are kind of feeling this way, and what are we going to do about it? And also, like, what are we doing that's leading us more and more in this direction? And how do we change that direction? You know, so that's kind of like that, you know, a little bit of like in your face, like question that's in that, you know, it almost feels a little bit like a punk rock thing, like kind of just like, here it is, like deal with it. But like, you know, but from a heart of like, wanting things to change and wanting things to be better and wanting people to feel like oh, it's not just me. Oh, okay. So if it's not just me, like maybe we who are all feeling this way can maybe get together and do something about it. So yeah.
Yeah, music, they say, is the universal language. And, I've seen you play in several places, and people just gather, and there's no one that cannot just, at least rug their feet, right, or move or do something. And
not if I can help it.
And this is a small town.
Yeah.
And it has its advantages. It also has its disadvantages sometimes.
Yeah.
But what do you think makes this town Goshen a special place? Because I think it is. It feels different than other towns, quite honestly.
I agree. Amber and I came. We lived in briefly in Illinois, Southern Illinois by St. Louis, and also in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is also a really special town. But we ended up feeling like, man, Goshen is a really special place. Yeah, I'll let you speak to this too for sure. But like for me, I moved here from Elkhart. Elkhart was a town that went through decline pretty significantly while I was in high school. And it was becoming very violent. There was a lot of problems there. And I just, initially when I came to Goshen, it was just because I wanted to stop worrying about whether or not all my stuff was going to get stolen while I was asleep. And, but what I found here then was a bunch of people who realized that we could make this town really cool if we decided to.
Yeah.
And people were really working towards that. And people are like, you know what? I'm going to make a kick-ass restaurant and like really like make it like amazing, like really great food. And I've gotten to tour with different bands, and you know what? The food here is as good as it gets. Like, it's really amazing. And when people start going, these buildings here are really beautiful. Let's take off all of the stuff that we stuck on them in the 70s and like make them look good again.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh man, this is cool. Well, I wonder what's, it's like people began to realize the town could be beautiful and to realize that, oh, if I take initiative, I can make this cool, And there was like, it seemed like a whole group of people kind of all decided that over a period of like 10, 15 years. And like the more they did it, the cooler it got, Yeah. So anyways, that's what makes Goshen to me is special, because I grew up around here. It was not special at one point. It was just kind of a dumpy town.
When would you say that process started?
To me personally, it definitively started when Dave Pottinger convinced Brenda Kaufman to start the Electric Brew in 1996. I feel like that became a reason for people to come downtown and start talking and
that makes sense.
Hanging out. And that's really when the music scene in Goshen started in a lot of ways too.
Interesting.
It was the first time that I'd seen an example of people who didn't have to get signed to a record label and become, play in arenas to make a living in music. There was folk artists coming here, and that really changed everything for me. So I think to me, like, that feels like the starting point pretty significantly.
Interesting. Amber, let's go with you.
Oh yeah.
So you guys released your album Reverberations, correct, last year?
Mm-hmm.
How was that process?
It's
You're
a big
laughing.
process. That record, we decided to run a Kickstarter, which is like a crowdfunding platform that a lot of people know about, but not everyone. And so it's like a thing that kind of helps you take pre-orders to kind of help fund putting the record together. And in the case of independent artists, it also just helps like make a big deal out of something that can kind of get lost in the shuffle, when you're a small, and it helps give it some attention and urgency or whatever. So we had done that the winter before the record came out, and had a successful amount of like sales, like meeting our goals for what our budget was for that, and beyond a little bit, and And then we were maybe like halfway done with the record when we were doing that Kickstarter, which was like a month of, and then we finished up the record in a couple more months that winter. Because the thing about doing a record when you also run a studio is like on one side, like, okay, you don't have to pay someone else necessarily to do, you know, the mixing or whatever. Though we have done that in the past. We've done some that are totally us. We've done some where we went to another production team or whatever. But the thing is, you kind of work around your clients because, like, the clients kind of come first to make it all work, right? Yep. So it was like, you know, sometimes a longer process than it would have been for anyone coming in to, like, just hire Nate to do it or whatever. Yeah. But, yeah, I think independent artists right now, anytime you put out a big project like that, it's just a big long process of like, figuring out, you know, what do I do with Spotify now? What do I do with Apple? You know, there's just a lot of things you have to know, and you have to wear a lot of hats to do this yourself independently.
And the music industry has changed so much in the last 25 years.
Even like Nate's, I wasn't actually on the first Shiny Shiny Black record, but I was pretty involved on the back end business side of it. But what we did in like 2014 to what we did in 2023 even is like
completely
significantly different. Really? And so it's like you're constantly like learning and researching, and a lot of that I love, so that's okay. But like, yeah, it does kind of keep you going. It's like, what's going to make this work for us, you know? So then, we had a great time putting out the record last summer, and got to collaborate with Goshen Brewing a bit. We even had our own can, like, for a beer, which that was like kind of a fun moment for us. Yeah. We're like, we've arrived, you know. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, but you know, it's almost been more fun, just like getting the songs out in the world and still being able to talk about them with people. And we did submit to some awards and got some nominations, which that was great. But one thing that is cool about the industry now that was less so before is just that songs kind of have a longer lifetime, I think, in some ways, of like, before it was like, it's the release and then that's it. And then it's like, if you didn't make enough of a splash right at that moment, like, it's just going to fall away. But I think one good thing about streaming, while, you know, artists have a lot of tensions with like the way that streaming works and stuff, is that you can kind of still promote old songs and like they're new to somebody, and there's just a way of doing that kind of works. But that's one thing I've appreciated about it not being quite so driven to just release the record and that's it, you know.
So let's talk about, Amber, about the dynamic of you know, being both musicians and husband and wife.
Yeah.
How does that work at home?
I mean, we're very different people. So, I mean, I think I'm probably the more, maybe Nate wouldn't agree with this, but I'm kind of the more unusual artist, because I'm still a little more, like when you said, oh, my wife keeps me grounded to the details or whatever, or like other things in our life. More of the time, I've still played that role probably over the years, but actually I'm kind of not that way in some ways. So maybe it's more that we just kind of have, you know, a cutout of like where we're more that way or not, and then they just kind of fit around each other. I don't know.
Yeah.
What would you say, Nate?
Yeah.
You're kind of just looking.
Well, I just think like we keep each other grounded in different ways. Like each of one of us has things that we value more, that we call attention to each other. And I'm not to make that more specific, like sometimes, like, you know, Amber will be like, well, you know, hey, like we really need to raise our prices, and we really do need to, like, you know, get really clear with our clients, like, this is how much it is, you know. And then other times, you know, I'm trying to think of like
I'm like, where's this going?
Yeah. Well, just other times, like it's, you know, you've really pushed me in some really great ways to be like, hey man, you said you want to do this. Like, you got to leave time in the day.
Yeah.
You got to leave time in the day for that. And, because sometimes I get too like kind of stressed out about like, oh man, like there's all of these projects and all of these clients. I got to take care of them. And it's been really helpful to me to have somebody in my corner going, hey, like those people matter, but the only reason you're doing that is because of this. And so if this doesn't get attention, you're just kidding yourself, bud.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
So
that's beautiful. So Goshen's a small town, and I know that a lot of musicians, I have some friends that have left the areas, going to Nashville because, they want to be known, I guess, go to larger crowds. But you have decided to stay, which is great for the community. Because, we have, it's very lively to have that music scene where, musicians know other musicians and they stay connected and, they all help each other's bands and, they know each other.
Sure.
What do you think is the benefit of that decision of staying here?
Can I take?
Yeah,
can I
go
take
for
this
it.
one?
Go for it.
Well, partly because early on I was like the one who was like, no, we're not just leaving or whatever. We both had those moments, but I think, I don't know. Earlier on, it was probably a little bit fear-based because I grew up in this small community and it's like, this is where I knew people or whatever. But it kind of evolved to both valuing, like, when you have long-term relationships like that where everyone knows everyone a little bit, there's just kind of a continuity or richness that can happen there that when you uproot, you just are kind of like left at odds for a while. And I think, so I really valued that. And the other is like, we have family in the area, which again, and having children, it's like, okay, some of these were like really practical
Yes.
decisions at different times. But I think what Nate said earlier about Goshen being a place where when enough people start saying, oh, what could I do here to make this better or fit something that I have a vision for, it kind of gets a momentum, because I think there were little threads of Goshen being cool even before the point that Nate mentioned. Like, one small thing or big thing, whatever, might be like the co-op, and like that started in like maybe the 70s, or like the beginning of the clay scene, of clay artists is like way back. So like there's like, when you grow up here, which I grew up in Goshen, pretty much never lived in another town until I was an adult and decided I need to get out of town. So I mean, I think getting out of town is good too, and going to new places. But you kind of come to this wrestling of like, oh, like on one level it's like limiting feeling to be here, but in other ways it's like you can build something that you couldn't have built otherwise, because there's that interconnectedness. So let me flip that and also ask you, what can the community do to support you better as a local band? And what can the community do to make sure that artists like you not just stay here but thrive in Goshen? Yeah, and we're kind of in that zone right now where we're like, we have built a core of like a good thing, and we've done forays of like more touring or traveling in the past, but we're kind of getting ready to do that again. So I mean, one thing would be like, tell your friends that don't live here, if you do love what we're doing, and even recommending communities or venues that we could play at. And the other is like, we have a Patreon that's a very direct, it's like a patronage platform that a lot of artists or like YouTube creator types are using to just let people give some financial support to something that they value. Right. So
awesome.
That's a real direct way.
We should put a link here on the video so people can go there and support
That'd
you.
be great.
And I really recommend the audience to go listen to your album, Reverberations. But that song, Stranger in a Little Town, it's powerful.
Thank you, man.
Well, there's several of them, but to me that was like, I don't know, it just stuck to me. There are other songs that talk to other people, but that one is like,
wow, that's
I gotta
so
go back
good.
and keep playing it. It's really good.
I wanted to add one thing to that. if I can, when you ask the question like how can this community help, I think one thing that's really hard, a lot of artists make physical things, right? Like if I'm a painter, I make a painting and you can take that painting home with you. If I'm a ceramicist, a potter, you can take, a dish or a bowl or a vase or whatever, a sculpture home with you. Music's a little different than that. I think that I really value what people like Jesse Sensenig from Goshen Brewing Company, because the number one practical thing is if I can't pay my bills, I have to go do something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you want the work to be better, I have to be able to spend more time doing that work. Yeah. Right. And that's just really practical, and I can think of so many great musicians who have come from this town, and there's quite a few here right now. But there's also some that have had to go somewhere else to get enough work. And I don't know totally what the solution is, but I do want to encourage people who don't do creative work to do the math. Yeah. And what I mean by that is like, okay, so we charge a certain amount of money to play a show. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you're so expensive. Or when they hear about the studio, oh man, that's really expensive. But if you do the math, and you say, oh, like if I book every day in my studio in a month, I make this much money, but I have this much expenses that go out of that. And then by the time like we pull all that back down to reality, sometimes there's been years where I could make more money working at Walmart as a cashier. It just is what it is. And so like, that I think is probably one of the biggest things, is like just encouraging people like think a little bit more about that. And if you can find ways to help somebody that's doing something that you care about, see if there's if they could use a little support. So
I don't know how many times I've heard people, perhaps my age or older than me, say, the music today is, it's not good like the good old music. But the reality is that there are really good music in front of us, but sometimes either we don't know them or we just don't support them enough. So that, if we support good music, then it will flourish. It's a natural thing. So that's
absolutely true. I think it's also like easy to sink into what is familiar. Yep. And get if you kind of become like enclosed, if that makes sense, and stop looking out for new things. I think it's easier when you're a young person, you don't know what is, you're looking out, but then as you age, it's easy to start just looking into what you've already discovered. And the reality is, like, you can go to Goshen Brewing Company every Wednesday night and listen to new music. You can go to a lot of other places around the area, different venues, and discover new music all the time. You know, so to me, that's exciting. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm always looking for something fresh.
Yeah. So you have a webpage. We recommend the audience to go and visit your webpage, and that is shinyshinyblack.com. And I checked it out. You have the next gigs there on the schedule, and also your bio.
Yeah,
which is very helpful. And I really, really recommend you go and listen to the song that I'm telling you about.
Yeah,
you're gonna get hooked to that.
Well,
but you're very busy besides the studio work that you do, and you have other projects, renovation of some
or a
19th
house
century, right?
Yeah, right.
So how is that coming along?
Oh yeah, I was working on it today, right before we got here.
It's coming along.
Working on a bathroom on the first floor. So yeah, just plugging away, trying to make it better.
Little by little.
And little by little. Yeah.
Very good.
So,
we will have some live music, and thank you so much for stopping by and agreeing to talk to us.
We're
Thanks
honored,
for having us.
And
it's fun.
I also want to give a quick shout out because you guys are like a local media.
Yeah.
Right. And that is really hard right now to do.
It is.
It's incredibly hard. The amount of newspapers and local news outlets that have gone under in the last decade is unreal. And I think you guys are very brave for starting
Yeah.
a new organization. And I would encourage anybody who's aware of the Goshen Chronicles to get on board and support, because it's really important to have local news sources.
Yes.
So,
Just
thank you
like what
guys.
we were telling you, and thank you for that, but we were talking about how the music industry has changed. Same thing with news outlets.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You know, back into the globalization period where big companies acquire local papers, local newspapers, and local TV stations. Now it looks, or it seems like that process is going back, and so local, news agencies kind of disappeared, and so we are here because we're passionate about it.
Yeah.
And just like you,
Yeah,
we're
that's
doing what
awesome.
we love doing, and we wouldn't do it any other way. So.
Well, I'm really excited and grateful you guys are here. I really
It's
am.
a pleasure.
So,
I get to meet awesome people like you.
awesome.
I get a one-on-one. I didn't have that before, so it's awesome. And
Yeah.
by the way, thank you also to Sahib Ramirez, who is the founder of the Goshen Chronicles. He's a professional journalist from Mexico. At some point he
Okay.
has to tell his story. He has a wonderful story.
Okay.
Also a little tragic, but I'll let him
Yeah.
I'll let him tell the story later when he feels confident about it. But anyway,
Yeah.
Sure.
well, thank you so much. Anything you would like to add to the audience, or
We have all the social media, so Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and we're on iTunes, the Google Play, Amazon Music, Spotify, all of it. And, and if you see anything or hear anything that we're doing that you're excited by or interested in, just drop a note. We would love to connect. So,
Yeah.
and you should have a place where they can give you feedback about your songs. Like, I think it's a good idea to let you know the impact your songs have on people. I just told you mine, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get to tell people. I just thought about it. We need to tell these, artists and songwriters, hey, your song really, we had Sadie the other day here.
Yes.
Oh
She's
yeah,
great,
we
right?
saw that.
She
that's
had
awesome.
she had this one song, maybe I don't know, that's another song. I'm like, oh my gosh, we are so blessed to have people here that are so talented.
yeah.
And
she's
so that
incredible.
was amazing. So thank you so much for your songs. Thank you
man.
for the
Yeah.
encouragement and for the challenges sometimes.
Yeah.
And it was amazing having you here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Friends, family, Magdiel Santiago, the Goshen Chronicles. Again, please remember to like, share, subscribe if you haven't done so. And please go to shinyshinyblack.com and listen to the songs. You're going to love it. And if you have the opportunity, go to one of their concerts.
Yeah.
See you next time.